All right, welcome back to another weekly film study. As people come in, if they got questions, by all means, drop them in there, ask them. We'll get it rocking and rolling. But my goal for this episode in particular was kind of a, hey, first one of the year. What do we want to talk about? What do we want to get into? What are things that have been capturing my attention? And that's the fun part about winter break, right? Is you get to leave the office, you get out of the grind for a little bit. I spend way too much time on social media watching what other people do and things like that, consuming presentations because now I have time to sit down for an hour and actually go through a PowerPoint or go through a presentation, see somebody else do it. I was able to watch some of the videos from Bill DeLonghis's Strength on the Gridiron presentations. If you guys haven't checked those out, those were awesome. We had Bill on the podcast talking about it not too long ago, but finally had time to go through those and steal some ideas and definitely some of those coaches. I'm like, man, I got to reach out to them. I got to get them on the podcast. I have follow up questions for them. So, it was great to do that, but it really gets my gears thinking of, okay, obviously there's certain things that I want to do myself in 2026. I'm doing a little bit more of trying to do a little bodybuilding program, trying to put on a little bit of size, trying to stay lean. We'll see what happens there. Doing more with nutrition, right? That started with the end of December doing the meal prep guide. And I still have those meals in the freezer, man. They come in clutch. Telling you, if you haven't checked that out yet, go back and watch that one. Go back and get the 50 meal guide. Worth it. So feeling really good about that. Feeling good about myself and where I'm at training wise. But this is that time of the year where you're thinking, how can I get my program better? What new wrinkles? How do we can't just repeat what we did last year because what we did last year may not be enough. It may not be the right thing for this team in this situation. So always trying to get better, always trying to provide the best possible program I can for the kids. So it comes down to consuming information, deciding what's useful, keeping the good stuff, getting rid of the fluff, getting rid of the junk, and going from there. So this episode today will be some of the rambling, some of the thoughts I've written down. I got my notebook. I'm an old school guy, still write it in the notebook of things that I've been thinking about, things that I'm definitely going to try and find a way to incorporate in my program or do differently this year. So, before I get into that, a couple personal things that I think are really helpful for yourself as a coach. If this is something you find valuable, awesome. For me, one thing is when I get to work, or even more importantly, when it's time to turn the phone off at the end of the day, I have a hard time doing that. I am notorious for, I'm at work all day. I go home, I put the phone away from whenever I get home until after bedtime. Like that's family time. I'm locked in there. I'm locked into family time. But then, put the kid to bed. I may or may not get some work done from like 8 to 9, 8 to 9:30. But then 9:30 on, I got to get ready to go to bed. I got to wake up early the next day. And I'm notorious for being like, "Oh, I haven't been on Instagram. I haven't been on Twitter." And I'll lay down in bed, right? And I'll start scrolling away. And it's bad. It's a bad habit. If I want to do that, I should do that, in the morning. I should do that when I'm in the bathroom. Like I don't need to be I'm supposed to be unwinding. And yeah, I've got the settings, right, to limit the amount of blue light that comes in and all that. I get that. I have those on there, but it's still the fact that you're just laying there, you're not shutting your brain off, you're not going to sleep. So that's always been a little bit of an issue to me. Like I love consuming information. I can't stop. So I need to physically find a way to stop myself. And the screen limits on these things is stupid, right? Because what do? You just hit the password and you bypass it. So I need to come up with a better thing. I've used this in the past, but I'm being better about it in 2026. Maybe you've seen this on social media. It's called the brick. Okay. It's magnetic, a little brick thing. You can, what I usually do is I put it on my fridge, and when it becomes okay, it's time to start getting ready for bed myself, take my contacts out, brush my teeth. The way the app works, and I can even do it right here for you. Right. So you log into the app, boom, we're on brick mode. You can decide what apps to lock or not lock. All you have to do is tap it. Okay. And now I'm locked in. It gives you a timer of how long you've been locked out of your stuff. So if I try and go to Instagram, it says you've turned off Instagram. Can't go on. Can't do it. No matter how hard you try. There's no bypass. There's no code. The only way to bypass it, the only way to get access again is you have to go back downstairs. You have to go back to the fridge. You have to unbrick it. It's literally a brick. You can just throw it at somebody. Don't do that. Okay. And now I'll scan it to unlock. So oh, it's down a call. So that's the thing. And so I love the brick. I'm better about, locking my phone up so I can leave, the alarm clock unlocked. I can leave maybe, my text messages in case somebody wants to text or call me. Um, I can leave uh the podcast app. If I can't sleep, I gotta listen to a podcast. Like, it limits the amount of options you can do, and it shuts off everything you don't need. You don't need to be checking your emails at 9:30 at night, 10 o'clock at night. You don't need to be on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, any of those things. You just don't. So the brick is great. I also will just throw it in my pocket and I'll bring it here to work. And what I'll do is I'll brick my phone and then I'll put it on my assistant's desk. I'll move it out of my office and just be like, nope, I can't get distracted. So then, you're working, you're like, oh man, let me take a quick break. Let me go on my phone. Let me go on Instagram. And you can't. You just can't. So that's been huge. If you're somebody like me and you get distracted very easily, I recommend that. I think they're like $40 or something like that. Maybe less these days, but totally worth it in my opinion. Best screen reducing app thing out there. Can't beat it. Um, The other thing I'm trying to do better in 2026 is my energy drink consumption. So I'm a notorious. I have peaks and valleys of being a really big connoisseur of energy drinks. My favorite right now is called Gorilla Mind, and I'm sitting here thinking about why am I drinking these energy drinks? And I'm a black coffee guy. I got it in my shaker bottle here. But I'll do a shaker bottle of black coffee a day. And there are a lot of days where I'm like, I'm still stopping. I want an energy drink as well. And it's like, why do you want that? Is it for you're gonna drink it pre-workout? Nah, like yes, but I don't need to. I don't necessarily need to. I like, especially in energy drinks, more like Gorilla Mind and less like some of the basic ones out there. I like the nootropic, the other stuff that they add into it. Maybe not if there's beta alanine, I'm not a big beta alanine guy. I don't like that itchy feeling. But I like the other stuff. I like the alpha GPCs. I like the L-tyrosines. I like those things that give you kind of a mental sharpness and a mental clarity that you don't just get from having coffee. I think coffee can provide a little bit, caffeine can, but I think a good night's sleep. And then I've been playing around with, okay, out of all those things that are in the energy drinks that you like, what is the supplement? What is the thing that is going to make you feel the best? And what I've kind of found out in my research here is that the I do really well with an L-tyrosine supplement. So you can go on Amazon, you can buy, whatever, a 90-day bottle of L-tyrosine, $20 or whatever. So coffee and two of those, coffee and 500 milligrams of L-tyrosine has me mentally where I'd like to be from an energy drink without needing to drink an energy drink. So, if you're somebody like me, whether it's the nicotine, right? If you're a caffeine and nicotine combo type person or something like that, maybe try L-tyrosine, and maybe that'll help give you the feeling that you're looking for, coffee and L-tyrosine or whatever, you know, without necessarily needing to go get the other stuff that you can get in an energy drink. I don't think you need that stuff. So, yeah, big on those two changes to myself personally, and I'm hoping that those are two good habits that I'll keep throughout the year that'll um, have a compound effect over time. I think when you reduce screen time and when you're not putting as much crap into your body, obviously those things have a wide ranging effect. Once those start rocking, then other stuff gets a lot easier to complete. Some habits are a little easier than others at that point to maintain. So excited for that. So getting into some of the strength stuff and some of the conversations I've had with friends that are other strength coaches out there, some of the stuff I've been figuring out is one, um, I love extensive plyos, right? Ankle jumps, pogos, single leg, double leg, linear, lateral, even rotational, zigzag. I think, you know, there's a ton of benefit to that. I think there's a ton of benefit to that in the early off season period when, you're getting it rocking and rolling. You're trying to build up a volume. You can't be doing intensive depth jumps and things like that without having a base of extensive plyos underneath you. So I like those. I'm playing more with the Plyo Plus system where they have deep tier plyos, ping tier. So ping tier is extensive, like ankle jumps and things like that, but a little bit more dynamic. But they do a lot of deep plows as well, where it's like, hey, you're in a split squat, you're in a deep split squat position, you're doing your extensive plows out of there. So a lot of these things, and I'm sitting here thinking, like, how do I incorporate this into my program now? And what I normally do is I will blend it into one of our stations. So typically on a speed day for us, we're gonna have, let's say it's acceleration. It'll be acceleration, it'll be uh horizontal plyos and med balls, and then be some sort of maybe application drill or things like that. So I'm very likely to put extensive plyos with horizontal plows. So we might do ankle jumps and then get into bounding or get into broad jumps or long jumps and things like that. On a max V day, it's lasers, it's vertical plyos, it's whatever else we need to do. So yeah, again, extensive plyos can fit there. But I think the way I've been doing it in the past is it's a little bit more of an afterthought of the day. It's like the last thing that you're just checking a box. And I never want anything in my program to feel like I put it in there just to say that we checked the box. It needs to have value. And philosophically, I do think extensive pilots have value. So what I'm going to do a little differently this year is I'm going to blend it into our warm up more. Um, so if we're doing, whether it's high knees or A skips, like we might start with, hey, first whistle is going to be pogo jumps. Second whistle, high knees. Third whistle, jog it out to 20. So adding a way to put in some plyos in there and sneak them into the warm up. Guarantee that everyone's doing them. Coach them hard, because the warm up should be the hardest thing you coach all day. You got to make sure they're focused and dialed in and paying attention there. And then we can do it out of a multiple directions. So now we can say, hey, face sideways here on the whistle. First whistle, we're going to do pogo jumps, moving sideways. Second whistle, is going to be shuffle. Third whistle, jog it out. So a way to add them in there. I think a way that's going to be pretty smooth. I'm excited for that. I'm excited to add a little bit more, and give our warm up a little bit of a change up too. I think sometimes I get in a rut for sure. I think routine is good because it allows you to be disciplined and detailed and focused. But at the same time, uh, when the routine is too set in stone, kids are very quick to check out as well, unless you coach the crap out of them and get on them. So a little mix there, a little new wrinkle that we're going to put in that I'm excited for is extensive plyos in the warm up. Now this next topic, this was something that I thought about. I was doing a workout the other day, and I'm freaking huffing and puffing. I'm on I'm not on the floor because I'm tougher than that, but I'm hurting a little bit, and it's funny. I think men, it can be women as well, but predominantly men. I think if you want to open up and you want people to start thinking inwardly and thinking deeper, I think men respond really well to being in a state of fatigue, right? There's a reason why, all these quote unquote vision quests or things like that involve physical activity, right? Going out in the woods and camping, or going out and hiking, going on a hike and then reflecting when you get to the top of the mountain, doing a hard challenge and then reflecting. um, I think there's value in putting yourself in a state of fatigue because it allows you to be a little bit more open, a little bit more reflective and receptive. So when I think about that with our kids, I think about, when do my lessons hit the hardest? When do they stick the most with them? And it's after our hard conditioning days. If we did a gut buster of a conditioning session, we bring it up, and it's January and there's steam coming off every single guy, and we're in a circle together and we're doing, yeah, the message sticks a little bit more. The eyes are open, the ears are open. Now, if it's tempo runs and we're laughing and we're having a good time and we're trying not to crush the kids, we're keeping it at a cruise control, 75% intensity or whatever it may be. You get done with those, you bring it up, and what are kids? Are they eyes wide, ears open, locked in on you? No, they're probably like, all right, I'm showering, I'm getting out of here, I'm done for the day. It's just, it's hard to get them. Maybe a little bit more. Same thing on our speed days. So if we do a speed day and we're trying to keep them fresh and fast and following the feed the cats philosophy on a speed day, to then ask them to reflect and think inwardly, it doesn't hit as hard as when they've done something physically demanding and put themselves in a state of fatigue, and then you ask them to keep an open mind or look inward. So, I think about, I don't have a problem with it on the days where we finish with conditioning. That's a day where I know I'm gonna get a good speech, a good lesson, and it's gonna sink in. But on our days where we do speed work and then we go into the weight room and we finish in the weight room, you know, your B block, your squats, your whatever it may be, your bench press, it's gonna be hard, but then your C block is accessories and things like that. And then you clean up your rack. And if you get done early, you foam roll. And then you're kind of waiting for your teammates to finish up. And then when you do finally bring it up, you're not tired anymore. And sometimes I think the kids at that point have checked out, and because they finished the day, they're just sitting there waiting for you to break the team down so that you guys can go home and shower and go on and be students and go about the day. So it's one of those things I'm thinking about. Okay, on our lift days, is there something we can do together as a team to finish the day and get everyone, in a state of exhaustion? Whether it might be, isometrics, it might be push-ups on the whistle, it might be some sort of partner activity. It could be contact prep. Like I'm thinking about, like, is that a place post lift where we put, instead of doing the contact prep on the field, maybe we're doing that in place in the weight room. Finish the day with that stuff. Get them like pushing and pulling a little bit, getting breathing heavy, and then say, "Hey, bring it up and let's get them in a better mind state to receive whatever message they're going to receive." So I'm thinking more about that. It may not be an everyday thing in the weight room, but definitely going to be some days where, okay, we got to finish with some sort of challenge and some sort of thing that's going to get them um, in a state of fatigue. And tied along with finishing the lift hard, finishing in a hard way, I've been thinking more about getting some higher volume finishers into our C block and our accessories. Sometimes when I write 3 by 10 on a sheet, I'm writing that. I'm expecting, if we're doing dumbbell rows, I want all 3 sets of those to be close to failure, right? I never put weights per se on that. I never say you got to do, this weight for dumbbell row. You got to do this. I try to keep these situations open ended so that kids can just push themselves as hard as possible. If you're a skill guy and you can do 3 by 5 on pull ups, um, I expect you to go get a belt and go get a vest and add some weight and make it a hard 5. Don't settle for, oh, I can do sets of 10 all day. Good thing coach only put 3 by 5. Like, we don't let that fly here. So you got to challenge yourself. But I think the other way to do that too is with some higher volume stuff, especially if we're trying to quote unquote put some hypertrophy on. If anything, I'm just trying to build up some endurance qualities, some robustness qualities, some tendon and connective tissue health as well by doing the higher volume stuff there. So, it's like buys and tries and shoulders. Obviously I've always done some high volume stuff on that. The kids love that stuff, but can we do, some higher volume, whether it's like band, what do you call them? Band good mornings. Is there something we can do for hamstrings? There can be a little bit, banded leg curls, get those in the higher volume range. I wrote a note down here about low back strength being important, doing back extensions. I think, we can do those for high volume. And then I think the body weight stuff is criminally underrated. I think getting back into I've been doing more lunges, just body weight lunges myself. It's like, okay, let's do more lunges. Let's get into, high volume push up finishers and there's a reason why I like rope climbs and things like that are awesome. So sitting here thinking about that, thinking about, how can I incorporate some more high volume finishers? Again, get these kids finishing the day huffing and puffing a little bit, but also kind of building up some work capacity, sneakily building up some work capacity um, in the weight room through some of that stuff. I want to get strong, don't get me wrong, but I do want to build up right now in the first 6-ish weeks before we get into spring ball. Definitely want to build up some work capacity. So that's important to me there. I got that written down as a note. And I wrote this down too. There's another note I had. Focus on the quality you want. So, we get into this planning stage of the year where we're planning out our off season, we're planning out our spring workouts, getting ready for summer, and you're like, I want to get faster. I want the kids to have a work capacity. I want the kids obviously to get stronger. Some of my kids need to put size on. There's so many different things you need to accomplish right now. And I guess what I'm trying to say is make sure that whatever you're doing gets done. If you want the kids to get stronger, spend 6 weeks getting stronger. I see a lot of this progression stuff on social media where people, don't get me wrong, I love triphasic. I love the idea of, you know, 2 weeks eccentrics, 2 weeks isometrics, 2 weeks concentric, but like, was 2 weeks enough? Did you Did you get the adaptation in 2 weeks, or is it just because Cal said 2 weeks, or just because 2-2-2 fits nicely into a 6-week template? You know, sometimes I think we are rushing it, and I don't think we're getting the adaptation that we really think we're trying to get. So we need to take a step back and think about that. Like, if we wanna get stronger, spend 6 weeks getting stronger. Like, you don't need to, you don't need to do 3 weeks of strength and then 3 weeks of power because you're getting ready for spring ball and you wanna make sure they have some power output. Like, they'll be fine. I would rather spend 6 weeks getting stronger than try and get stronger faster, more powerful, and then go into spring ball, and all of those things are at, like, here, when we really could have moved the needle on strength. Obviously, these would have improved as well, and then there's gonna be a time of the year where, okay, now we can focus a little more on power. Spring ball is at the time of the year where, at least at my level, am I gonna push them as hard strength-wise? No, probably not. Probably gonna take that 1 notch down, and I'll push the power stuff then during spring ball because one of those things, a little less volume, we can increase the intensity a little bit, but also by that point we have 6-week base of work capacity and extensive plyometrics and things like that, and we're ready for more intensive things. So just something to think about there. Of like, sometimes when you want to try and do it all, oh, the kids got to get bigger and they got to get stronger and we got to get more powerful. Like, I think about bodybuilders as I was writing this bodybuilding program. Like, if you really wanted a kid to put on size, then you need to sacrifice a lot of other things to do that. If you want a kid to get bigger, he's gonna probably in the short term get slower. Now, if you can't convert the newfound muscle into strength and then power and speed, then we have an issue there. But think about bodybuilders, how hard they train and how hard they work just to try and put on a little bit more mass. And they're using a ton of drugs. Like, and you think that because you did 2 weeks of hypertrophy before going into 2 weeks of strength work, like that you did enough hypertrophy to elicit the effect? Just something been grinding my gears a little bit and thinking about that. Just like I should be able to look at your program and say, dang, I know one thing's for sure, your kids are gonna get blank, you know? Your kids are gonna get stronger. That's a guarantee. That's something that I need to continue to remind myself and think about as I put our program together. I guess the last note I had here as I'm looking down at my notepad here is consistency over adaptation, and that kind of fits in with everything that we talked about here. I think one of the downsides of uh, running the triphasic type of stuff is like if you miss a day, you missed something, like, quality-wise, you missed a big thing. Like, what happens if you're doing that 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, and a kid is sick and he missed a week of isometrics? So he goes eccentric, missed the week because he's sick, comes back, he's on the 2nd week of isometrics, and then moves on to concentric. Like, that kid didn't get the adaptation that the rest of the team was getting. That kid didn't, but, like, you gotta move on because your program says it's time to move on. Should that kid stay and do another week isometrics while everyone else is doing concentric? Like, I don't know. Something to think about there. And I never want to let one day make or break our program. So, I mean, there's a reason why we do lower body 3 times a week. We do upper body at least twice a week because, if they miss a day, at least they got 2 more lower body days. They got 1 more upper body day. And I'll be honest, like even on our lower body days, it's not like it's only lower body. Like we'll put a ton of back work and posterior chain, upper body wise too, on those leg days. So, I think if a kid ever missed a day in our program, it's not the end of the world. That's important to us. But being consistent is what's going to get you better. And I think at the high school level, consistency is the biggest thing that we're all chasing. We want the kids training year round, 3 to 4 days a week. I will take a kid on a lesser quality program that trains 3 to 4 days a week year round than the kid that, will train during football season or will train during the summer and then is nowhere to be seen in the winter, is hit or miss in the spring. You know, give me the consistent kid, even on an inferior program, than the kid on a better program who's not there all the time. It's just something to think. So as coaches, we're sitting here thinking about, okay, how do we do that? How do we get kids to be more consistent? How do we Part of it is, right, we gotta teach them that. We gotta teach them how to be consistent. We gotta teach them how to build those habits. We gotta lead by example with our own habits, right? We need to be I can't tell anyone to be consistent if I'm not consistent with my own training, with my own nutrition, with my own lifestyle and habits. So trying to be better, trying to always be more consistent myself, but then also creating a program, not just lifting wise, but a culture wide program that kids want to be a part of every day. They want to be in. They want to be in the weight room. It's the best part of their day. They don't want to miss that. I think if your program is ball buster hard for no reason, or it's not a place that's now fun and hard are two different things, right? You can have a lot of fun and things can be hard at the same time. I think that's something that sometimes we get confused on, but um, it's one of those things that I think the more you can get the kids to show up every single day by making it a great place to be, making it a place where they're getting results, they're getting better because that's also going to breed consistency, then you're going to get more out of them than just making sure that they're there maybe for the summer workouts and getting locked into that. Yeah, you'll get some adaptations there for sure, but the biggest changes and the biggest adaptations come from consistency. You know, you could, like we just talked about at the beginning with the habits that I'm trying to change for myself. I could change 10 habits and get a huge adaptation in the first week. You know, cut off my screen time, get rid of the caffeine, start going to bed at 9 o'clock every day. But I could do all those things and see an immediate, you know, adaptation in my body. My body will start operating differently if I do all those things. Now, is that going to be something that I can consistently do? It's going to be hard for me to be consistent doing all those things, getting rid of all those things. So finding the right amount of challenge and push while also still making it fun and not making it something that, if I went to the extreme and deleted the apps off my phone and said, I'm not going to have these on my phone, period. Okay. Yeah, that's going to give me a heck of an adaptation. It's going to change the way I look at my phone, but it's not something that I'm going to be able to sustain. I'm not going to be consistent about it. And very quickly, I'm going to start putting those apps back on my phone. So, just something to think about there. I think consistency is something we're always trying to chase as a program, trying to get better at. I had one more idea come to mind, and I'll finish with this. Is um, as we get into our off season here, we have 6 weeks until spring practices, and we have 3 weeks really until our coaches come in and they want to do mat drills. And I've always been back and forth on mat drills. I've gotten better at feeding them good drills to do during mat drills, and maybe we'll save that for its own weekly film study. If anyone does mat drills and they want to learn how to do them better, let me know. Drop that in the comments of this one, and we'll make sure we record that. But it's one of those things. I know that that's coming down the pipe. It's an opportunity for our coaches who have been gone for the month of December and January to come back in and start coaching the kids up again, coaching them hard and in a way that, yeah, I will coach them hard. I'll get after them, but it's different when it comes from your sport coach. So it's an opportunity for them to do that before spring ball. That way, when they get to spring ball, it's not a shock to the system when you're getting MF'd for going the wrong way or not reading the scout team cards correctly and things like that. You're used to hard coaching. So I think there's value in it. I still think it's something that can and should be done if you do it the right way. So I'm not changing that, but I'm changing my view on the 3 weeks prior. And it's one of those things, kids got to be ready to do hard things. And I think this is where the consistency over adaptation thing comes in. Can I really, if I did tempo runs for 3 weeks and build an aerobic base and do all the things that I'm supposed to do, am I really getting them ready for mat drills in 3 weeks? Am I really building that much of an adaptation that they're going to be prepared and ready and robust and able to handle getting freaking yelled at, getting dogged a little bit? Like, no, no, it's not going to get them ready. So as much as I want to build a base and build a foundation, I think it is neglect on my part if I don't put them into some hard anaerobic glycolytic conditioning prior to mat drills, so it's not a shock to their body, shock to their system when they do those things on week 4, week 5, week 6 of our off-season program. So, there's a time and a place for everything. I think it is okay though to do hard things. I think a lot of times now, especially on social media, you get kind of like, oh, that's not best practice anymore. That's why are you still doing mat drills? Oh, and a lot of people will uh, raise their nose at it and think that they have the answers all figured out. But you know what? Works for us, works for our program here. And if it takes me doing some gassers, doing some half gassers to get them in that mode and get them ready to do hard things and hard challenges, then a couple weeks of that, 2, 3 weeks of that out of 52 weeks of the year, I'm gonna get a nice long from spring ball till August camp. I'm gonna get plenty of time to get them aerobic adaptations they need, get them tuned up and get them ready. I'm not worried about that. I wanna make sure that they are going to compete and be locked in and give their best effort for winter workouts and for mat drills and things like that. So I need to make sure that my conditioning reflects that right now. So just all these thoughts that I have going in my head. This is the best time of year because you have so many things you gotta absorb it all, and then you really gotta decide what's useful and what's not. I think there's a ton of resources here in the insiders group, and I hope you guys are using them. I hope you're going through them. If there's things you want to learn more about, let me know. I'll make sure that we get them filmed on a weekly film study. I'm going to make sure that we get some Wildcat webinars going so we can get some guest speakers come in, do some presentations. I already got a few ideas for 2026 that I'm really excited about. But you guys let me know. What other questions do you still have? How can I help you? Especially because I got a little extra time here before we start our winter workouts. So if you need anything from me, reach out. Either drop a comment here, send me a message directly on the insiders. You can do that as well. Obviously, everyone's got my email as well if that's something too. So hope you guys enjoyed this one and take it easy. We'll see you at the next one.